Good morning to Adam Wooten for his talk on the vibrant and ever-changing landscape and possibilities for linguists in today's evolving language service careers. Adam is Associate Professor of Translation and Localization Management at MIIS, as well as a translation tech and AI consultant. He is also a founder of companies in the localization field. Adam will highlight the range and diversity of new types of career roles that languages open up for today's linguist. Adam, good morning to you. We'll pass over the controls for you now. We can't hear you just yet, Adam.
Thank you. Are you seeing my screen okay?
We do. Perfect.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the many opportunities that there are out there and how they are evolving now. It is great that that there's so many things that that you can do with language now, and how many professionals in the language industry wish they had known much earlier about all the possible career opportunities that our industry offers, or how many college students would love to prepare for a career in language services, but they have no idea the option even exists. Perhaps like many, I often think that the only option is to perhaps teach another language. Part of this may be the problem that there are no 5-year-olds at school career days saying, hey, when I grow up, I want to interpret for international conferences, or translate technical patents, or manage localization projects. I certainly didn't meet any fellow 5-year-olds in any of my classes who knew anything about this. And perhaps there's a problem with that maybe we're victims of our own success. Maybe language service providers have been too good at our jobs, too good at being the invisible interpreter or the invisible translator. Sometimes language services is called the biggest industry you've never heard of. And even inside the industry, some opportunities should be more visible, but they aren't. Many of us try to raise awareness in presentations to university students talking about the basics, like the basic difference between translators and interpreters, as was illustrated in a feature film with starring Jake Gyllenhaal just this last year. And some of us try to raise awareness about opportunities beyond the basics. For example, sharing that many organizations need something more than translation, but they need translation and adaptation, which we often call localization. And that adaptation can be cultural, technical, or regulatory. And of course, there are many products that need not only translation, but also localization, ranging from software to websites to video games and marketing materials and much more. And those roles can combine many different skill sets that are already in demand, combining various different skill sets in business, language, and technology. So we can list out many different types of career roles, jobs, and careers, and it ends up becoming quite a long list, quite a large mosaic. I've frequently been asked to provide something a little bit more organized, perhaps a little bit more linear, for which reason I started, when I was presenting to those who were new to the industry or exploring the industry, I started to try to create some examples of linear career paths, like this example career path for a localization project manager, starting out as an intern or an assistant or a junior project manager, moving on to full project manager, then senior project manager, then director and vice president. But this linear display had far too much restriction. So then I tried to just illustrate with examples of twists and turns in career paths, sharing my own example or the examples of others, where I started out studying another language, getting a degree, working in translation, then moving into the tech and the management sides of things, and then into teaching and consulting. But how many alternatives was I not illustrating? There had to be a better way to illustrate this. Fortunately, I have a colleague, a brilliant colleague by the name of Winnie Hay, who created this graphic that she calls the ecosystem of language professionals. I liked how it wasn't linear. How you could see how someone with language skills who combine that with other skills could be very close to other opportunities in this ecosystem. And so I thought this was a brilliant next step. But then I still wanted to illustrate a little bit more, because there are so many opportunities in this industry. And I wanted to figure out, how could I try to illustrate so much? How could I illustrate a wide range of opportunities while also illustrating some opportunities to progress, and at least to some degree, illustrating some relationships between those opportunities. So I happen to love to hike and backpack with my dog and my kids, and I got an idea from my love of hiking. So many of you have seen this graphic by now. This is what I came up with, and it's not perfect, but it does illustrate some of this wide range of opportunities, together with some of their relationships. But again, all the relationships, particularly the hierarchy, is not perfect. But the important thing is that it has a lot of winding, merging, and diverging paths and trails that one can take. So you can go all over the place in this industry, whether you stay more in the near the peak where translators work, or in the peak where interpreters work, or you can go over to the purple where those who work in multilingual audiovisual translation and localization work. Or you can see you can work on the vendor side in the orange with those who specifically work with translation and localization and interpreting companies. Or you can work on the client side inside another large organization as part of the translation team there. And there are many other opportunities as well. In my own personal journey, I started out as a language teacher, loved that, and wanted to do a little bit more. So I started learning about translation, started working as a low-level translator while getting a degree, then got into interpreting, worked as a court interpreter, and then was still trying to build my resume and sample different opportunities. So I got a somewhat unofficial internship as a sales rep for a translation company. Then I moved over into working as a multilingual desktop publishing specialist and a translator at the same time for a multilingual newspaper. And moved back into a little bit more translation, and finally recognized, you know what, I want some opportunities to use my language to work in translation and interpreting, while also getting more experience with management. So I got an entry-level opportunity as an interpreter manager and a junior project manager. Again, still translating, doing that. And then I climbed the ranks a little bit, doing a little bit more vendor management, becoming a more senior project manager, then heading up the translation team, going back into heading up sales and marketing for a company, then working as general manager over the United States region for a slightly larger international company, and learning about all the opportunities that there are with technology as head of automated solutions for a company. Going back into sales, again, switching from peak to peak. You don't have to just start with one peak and then climb that and stay there, and once you reach the top, you're done. You can travel all over the place here. Then I was director and VP for some other translation companies on the operations side. Finally, then making a big shift into working as an educator while also still gaining some experience in the industry as a consultant. And it's been fun as a consultant to see many other opportunities throughout the industry that I had not previously been able to explore as I now collaborate with many on the client side here on the left in blue, working with a wide range of those from developers to managers to product managers, and still also working with others here over on the client side as well. So yeah, there are a lot of different opportunities. And I want to emphasize that the intent of this graphic is to illustrate opportunities and not restrictions, because with 2 dimensions, this graphic is naturally very, very imperfect and very limited. Now, some may focus on the hierarchical destination over the journey, because again, I'm trying to show something of relationships with these peaks, the vertical placement, but really not everyone's trail needs to end atop a CEO or CXO peak. There are many people who are very content to sit at overlooks, fish in streams, explore caves, or swim under waterfalls that are far from the peaks. So I don't mean to say, based on the vertical placement, I don't mean to say that some particular job is more important than another. It's just different. Now, there are some also who may make the assumption that everything is noted perfectly on the map, but but in particular with the vertical placement, that doesn't necessarily mean that a particular job is harder than another. There's some people who will demonstrate great expertise in one area that may actually be harder than another. And just because conference interpreter may be placed a little higher than community interpreter or medical interpreter doesn't necessarily mean that one is better than the other. It can be different. And some may notice that there are plenty of opportunities outside the map. Off the map, you may find an entire mountain range for language teaching that I couldn't fit on this one, or a complex network of caves for transcreation opportunities. So there are a lot of opportunities to explore. And there are a lot of professionals who work in these opportunities who I would encourage you to talk to explore, to learn more about what these jobs have to offer. And I want to remind you that, it can be pretty easy to reach out to these professionals, because the language industry tends to be unusually nice, which was one thing I love about the industry. I have my theories about why that might be, but I think most of you will agree that people in our industry typically tend to be rather kind and helpful of each other. Perhaps it's because we've had to learn another language, we've had to learn about another culture, and we've tended to develop a little bit more empathy than some others might have. But another reason why this is imperfect is because this landscape is still changing. You may have noticed that this peak in the back here, this red one, well, there's a reason why I made it red. This is actually a distant volcano, and it's gradually grown over time. Obviously, in recent decades, we've seen this peak become more and more prominent. And now in the last year and a half, it's become a much more active volcano. It's growing much more quickly. Some would say that it's even actively erupting, which will definitely be creating some change. And yes, it's scary to see it spewing lava and to see all the falling ash. But does this eruption and all the ash that's now falling all over this landscape, does this have the opportunity to create new peaks with new opportunities? You'll find studies and surveys out there trying to predict what additional things will be created there as part of this landscape. In this survey last year, performed on Slater.com, heads of LSPs were asked, okay, what were some of the new jobs that you expect to see as part of your language service provider, as part of your translation company? And these are some of the ideas that they came up with. Some of them seem very new, others seem a little bit more like adaptations of what already exists. But as this volcano erupts and covers the landscape, will this all be out with the old and in with the new? Or will we see more career shifts than career replacements? Will this fertile ash not only create new peaks, but will it also help some opportunities to grow, perhaps like we always wanted? Some would say that we are very well situated to see a lot of growth from this, in particular because some would say that decades of AI development in machine translation actually make us the best prepared industry. We've already had to experience adapting to AI with neural machine translation and its predecessors, learning how to better prioritize use of AI, learning how to better augment existing roles, like the role of a translator or editor, with AI. So because it's already been, this volcano has already been slowly growing and erupting for quite some time, now with this bigger eruption, perhaps this won't look like Pompeii. We won't all just be buried and die. I personally tend to feel more optimistic about the upcoming changes. Now, I do understand some of the fear. For example, some linguists fear they'll be relegated to only cleaning up machine translation messes, right? I'm not too excited about the idea of post-editing. And I think it's understandable that many translators will feel some kind of aversion to it. I think there are some natural reasons why translators might hate the idea of post-editing. There's certain things that we hate to do, and there's certain ways that we hate to be treated. For example, many of us, in our love of language, we love to create, right? We love to plan, we love to build, we love to create, and we like to use language to do that. And most of us really are not fans of cleaning up messes. So many of us worry, well, will linguists be relegated to only cleaning up machine translation messes? I believe that's not the case. I believe that bigger opportunities exist beyond just post-editing. But linguists must learn and do more in order for that to happen. Linguists shouldn't be stuck in stereotypical, ineffective machine translation projects. If you look at a stereotypical kind of awful machine translation project, and many have heard of these bad examples, that involves limiting linguist involvement to just this janitorial cleanup in the post-editing phase. And that will usually follow, of course, text will start in a source document or other format, go through machine translations and get to the post editor and hopefully reach whatever target goals there are. But then in this stereotypical, this ineffective version that many hear about and fear, the AI and the machine translation is following the GIGO model. And for those of you who don't know, GIGO stands for garbage in, garbage out, where it's garbage source text that comes out as garbage target text, or it's actually just garbage that's been put in to train the AI or train the neural machine translation engine. So naturally it produces garbage as well, where it's not custom trained. Fortunately, there are opportunities for linguists to add more value to AI and machine translation projects by actually getting more involved from beginning to end. And this has been the case for a number of years, but now with the advent of generative AI, there are even more opportunities for linguists to become involved throughout a project from beginning to end, not just doing menial janitorial cleanup at the post-editing phase. Linguists can learn how to ensure that the source is an appropriate fit for this type of project and ensure that content is appropriately prioritized. Linguists can help to actually create the AI and the machine translation engines by helping make sure that it's custom trained and well tested and proven. And linguists can help to shape the post-editing process to ensure that it's not just janitorial cleanup, where the linguists are underappreciated and expected to work miracles out of garbage. Instead, they can be creating reliable teams and tool sets and processes that will make the experience more productive and enjoyable, and then ensure that everything meets these appropriate measured goals. In order to do this, though, linguists do need to learn additional skills. I've presented this before as a couple of dozen skills. Could be divided into a couple of dozen skills that linguists can learn. Or it could be several dozen, just depending on how you divide it up. But for this reason, when I was asked to train a large translation team of dozens of translators for an international governmental organization, and they asked me originally to provide post-editing training, I said, no, I'm not going to provide post-editing training if it's just post-editing training. But I will happily train all your translators to become machine translation linguists, because there's so much more opportunity. It'll be so much better for your organization and better for your translators if they can be involved from beginning to end. And there are a lot of different skills that they can learn in order to do this. Everyone will find so much more satisfaction. And I think we'll find that linguists will be able to, many will be able to learn a lot of these skills and participate throughout. Others will start to even specialize in some areas that they really like. But yeah, this does require a shift, and linguists must adapt. And as they adapt, they need to do what we all need to do, and learn more. Because successful use of technology is most likely when we understand what it is that machines do best and what it is that humans do best, so that we can have them work together appropriately. And there are many things that machines do well, and many things that humans do well. And humans have limitations, machines have limitations. Because of some of those machine limitations and AI limitations, there are types of translation that will always require human involvement. In particular, creative types and high-risk types, where the consequences of bad translation are just too great to risk. But yeah, then there are plenty of other types of translation that can be handled appropriately by AI, and we will see those situations. I tend to agree with something that R.L. Lamel has said, that many of you have probably heard, that machine translation will displace only those humans who translate like machines. And when I was a translator, frankly, I was happy for that to happen. Why would I want to waste my time translating the boring, repetitive, low-risk stuff that was just not as fun if a machine could handle that for a situation where somebody didn't care as much about the quality? Why would I care if a machine handled that if that meant that I could then focus on the more interesting, more challenging, more exciting types of translation? So I'm optimistic. I tend to see that there are great opportunities there. Now, outside of the work of translators, some also claim that project management will all be automated away. And so they're saying, oh, well, this is just gonna get rid of all these roles. And I don't believe that either. In fact, we've actually been hoping to automate away a lot of the boring stuff for decades, in the management role as well. For example, years ago, in the early 2000s, while working with one of my favorite CEOs, Jonathan Kirk, he's actually from your side of the pond, Cambridge graduate. He started up a translation company that wanted to use a lot of technology and had a lot of experience with AI, and was just quite a brilliant man. And he liked to compare a project manager's role in translation to the role of a nuclear power plant operator, where he imagined that project managers should be able to monitor the status of dashboards and controls until a light blinks to indicate a need for intelligent human intervention, so that good project managers could focus on being problem solvers and solution designers, and all the tedious stuff, they didn't need to worry about it. It was being monitored by the technology. So, and I think that sounds much more exciting than the current version that many translation companies are following, where the project manager is working much more like a nuclear power plant operator in a cartoon, constantly panicking because everything requires constant manual work to know a project status or keep a project moving. And there are many bad project managers or project managers at bad companies that are consistently overworked heroes, where they're thinking, oh, you know what, actually I want AI to take over the boring and tedious and time-consuming things that are causing me to burn out. There are others who've been pushing for this, for a lot of this advancement. Some years ago, Iris Orris, Facebook's Senior Vice President of Internationalization, came to speak to my students at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. And she talked about how she wanted her localization project managers to actually spend 90% of their time working upstream from localization, dealing with preparation and problem solving ahead of time, and then actually only spending 10, so this was a localization manager, she only wanted them to spend 10% of their time working downstream, actually working on the actual localization. And they would be able to do that because so much of that would be automated. But this required them to do a lot of work ahead of time. It requires localization managers to expand their skills beyond just localization because they're trying to automate a lot of that. It requires them to know more about topics like internationalization, the preparation that makes it easier. It requires them to learn more about international product management and other topics outside of what we're normally comfortable with in just translation or just localization. And so, yeah, this creates a lot of opportunities, but this is the direction that we've needed to head for a long time. For how many years has Common Sense Advisory, now CSA Research, been talking about the localization maturity model? And how many of us, how many translation companies are still in one of those lower or middle steps when we really need to progress to become more optimized or transparent, as they call it. And it's great that artificial intelligence can be a great tool to help us get to those next steps, to make it all much more fun, much more exciting, much more enjoyable, and less likely to burn anyone out. But again, this does require a shift, and project managers and others in the industry must adapt. So we have to ask ourselves, will we be just staying still somewhere on one of these peaks, just sitting there, not moving, so that we're buried in the ash? Or will we keep moving so that we can stay atop of the change? Years ago, Daniel Marcoux was on a panel discussion with me, and he's been the director of Alexa AI information for Amazon. He's also been involved with artificial intelligence to fight human trafficking and to try to find cures for cancer. So he's very bullish on what AI can do. He said that machine translation will not replace professional translators, but technology-savvy professional translators will, and other LSPs will replace those who are not willing to learn and continuously upgrade their skills and processes. And I believe that's still true. I believe that's still true. You got to keep moving. There's an analogy that many of you may have heard. There's an old story about a donkey or an ass that was wandering around a farm and ended up getting stuck in a hole. And the hole was, the ass got stuck there and couldn't move, couldn't get out. The farmer found it and didn't know what to do. Wasn't able to get the ass out of there. Wasn't able to remove it, extract it without harming it. Didn't have the technology and the machinery to do it. And so the farmer just felt really bad and gave up. So he told the ass, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. You've been good, but I just need you to stay there, stay calm, and I'm going to bury you because I can't have any other animals falling in here. So he brought out a shovel and started shoveling dirt down on top of this donkey. And the donkey had some choices. The donkey could have panicked, given itself a heart attack. The donkey could have just given up, let itself be buried. But instead, the donkey saw some opportunity. And as the dirt would be shoveled down on top of the donkey's back, the donkey would shake it off, stomp it down, shake it off, stomp it down. This went on for hours and hours until because the donkey kept moving, this earth that was being shoveled in actually raised the donkey up because it kept moving. And so as we're seeing the ash from this AI volcano fall all over the landscape, we need to also keep moving. And there are ways we can do that. We can continue to learn and use AI appropriately. We can cultivate expertise that is core to our humanity, understanding what is real in specific subject matters, or focusing on our humanity to understand more the creativity, the culture, the humor, empathy, self-awareness, emotion, and ambiguity, things that AI tries to emulate but can't always quite do. And we can be flexible. We can cross-train. We can move up the value chain, learning about more than just our part, but learning how we can use more technology, collaborate more with others to take on a bigger role, which is something that we've always wanted. We've always wanted to make sure that language is more influential in our organizations and in the companies where we work. And this is our opportunity to do it. And this is when we really need to do it. So, of course, educators also need to do that. That's why in the programs where I teach, we are adapting. We're making sure that in our Masters in Translation and Localization Management, and also in our online, it's actually a new shorter online Masters in Localization Project Management that's actually starting in September. We're making sure that students are learning more about these other topics, learning more about AI, learning more about internationalization, learning more about broader perspectives so that they can be ready to adapt to this vibrant and ever-changing landscape. So yeah, with that, it would be my pleasure to take some questions.
Thank you very much, Adam, for the fascinating and insightful presentation. The questions are coming in. So one of the first questions was with regards to, can seem a bit sort of confusing or overwhelming with all these different options and roles and so forth. So as someone entering the profession, or even someone just working as a translator at the moment, how do they sort of go about, deciding which direction to go in, whether it should be the sort of creative human translation or one of these myriad of roles?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, right? It can be quite overwhelming, but I will say that just by coming to this conference, that is a great step forward, right? That is a fantastic step forward to being able to learn, take in a lot of that information, and begin to explore what you might like. A couple of things that I frequently recommend to newcomers in the industry are, going to conferences like this. Number two, also trying some things out. There are ways that you can, if you already have an idea of some of the things that you might like to consider, there are ways that you can try it out. Sometimes that involves, doing perhaps a little bit of volunteer work with a nonprofit or something, to gain a little bit of experience and see what you might like. Sometimes it involves trying it out by taking some courses related to it. But another thing that you can do at conferences like this, or at other in-person conferences and other places, is you can make sure that you get to know other professionals in the industry. Even if you're not just a professional newcomer, but even if you're a student, students sometimes feel intimidated by this. But when I meet with one of my students, one of the first questions I ask is, do you know at least 10 professionals who do what you want to do? And of course, most of them say no. It's rare that I have someone who knows, a student who knows 10 professionals who do what they want to do, or do what they're considering doing. And so I'll say, okay, well, what's your plan to get to know them? Again, this is a friendly industry. There are a lot of ways you can get to know other professionals. You can reach out to them on LinkedIn. Maybe you can just look up all professionals who do a particular job that you want to explore. Look up all of those who have graduated from your alma mater, from the university where you study. And because on LinkedIn, you can search for that. If you want to find out, who's working in machine translation, type in machine translation and filter in LinkedIn for only those who graduated from your alma mater, and that'll give you a couple to talk to. And go to some regional events for, maybe it's a local lunch or a women in localization event as well, or more of these events. And yeah, just get in touch with as many people as you can and talk to them. Find out what it's like. Find out not only what you need to learn from this to see if it would be a match for your skills and interests, but find out what it's really like for them to determine, okay, is this something you'd really enjoy? Is this something that you would want to be part of your lifestyle? But yeah, I hope some of that helps. We could talk a lot more about that. And of course, there are personality tests that you can take at a general level as you're exploring careers. And some of that can be helpful, and recognizing that, most jobs out there can in some way be combined with language in there. So why? Because the language industry touches on so many other industries, you can combine your love and your interest and your skills in one area with language.
Fantastic. Okay. So another question that's come in. A lot of the roles you lay out for linguists seem more relevant to in-house translators. As freelancers, we have been unwillingly and with no additional remuneration training AI for years by handing over our TMs, our translation memories, to agencies, and now are being asked to treat more text faster and for lower per word rate. Should all translators now insist on per hour rates if we are to position ourselves as language consultants? And then the sort of second part of that is whether that's realistic for freelancers, or whether there would need to be a sort of collective action in order to seize these new opportunities.
Yeah, you're right that is a challenge, and there are some advantages, right, to being able to assert yourself. It can be a little bit easier to assert yourself in-house and already have some credibility and to be able to influence how things are taking shape. But if you learn enough about machine translation, you will find ways that you can assert yourself even as a freelancer. In particular, because there are so many organizations that are really new to this. They're really new to offering machine translation. And what you described is evidence of that, right? Where they're forcing you to just post-edit rubbish and accept lower rates that just don't make sense. And some of that is in part because they don't really know what they're doing. And so if you learn more about it and can explain the benefits and advantages of using machine translation more intelligently, then you can make the case for how you will add value as you get more involved in the role there, right? Even just starting with the negotiation of price. I do like that there are some companies that don't treat their translators and their post editors horribly. I like, for example, the view that Marco Trombetti, the CEO of Translated, a very innovative tech translation company in Italy, I like that he's pointed out, for example, that he says, if we become 50% more efficient, we don't want our translators to make 50% less. We actually want them to make 25% more, because they're able to translate more words per hour. And I think that there are those leaders in the industry who want to be more like that. I'm not saying everybody is as focused on finding win-win situations like that, but there are many who do, and there are many who would do that if they knew how. So you do need to learn about machine translation, how it works, how machine translation can be customized with the help of a linguist. You could join, for example, the online masters in translation and localization management. The second course that you would take would be the translation tech course from me, and you would learn all about that, so that you could assert yourself and say, hey, you know what? You're not getting everything that you want to out of this. Right now, what you're showing me, what you're presenting to me to post edit for a very low rate is garbage. And you're actually, if I could get more involved, I could help you to become post editor, the post editor or machine translation linguist can tell this to the company. If I could get involved, I could help you get more benefits out of this, so you would achieve your goals, actually better achieving your goals for quality and speed and cost. If I could get more involved, so that it's not just garbage in, garbage out. And then I and other post editors would actually be very happy to work with you, because we wouldn't be wasting our time completely retranslating this rubbish. We could actually focus on improving what needs to be improved and save time not having to clean up the rubbish. So that's a very short, kind of a brief and condensed answer to that excellent question that would merit a whole other presentation and more. But yeah, there are possibilities. I have seen smart, assertive linguists be able to take on more of those roles, even from the position of a freelancer or independent contractor. But it does require you to expand, get outside your comfort zone, and learn more about machine translation to do it.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much, Adam. There's plenty more questions coming in, as well as some requests for you to talk at some universities as well. But we are going to have to leave it there. We've overrun. So thank you very, very much for your time and your presentation today.
And if you do have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to chat.